It was probably his death that brought him here. His head was not separated from his body. I looked at the sub-inspector and got his cue and called the police station. Forensic, Team 5 ambulance and DSP Saab himself had also arrived with heavy personnel. When this old cottage was searched, rotting bodies and structures were found from there, whose heads were being thrown near the park. At the back was the same blue rickshaw that we often saw in the footage of the CCTV camera. A very big mystery case might have been solved today. Karam Dad was sitting quietly on a big stone. I told everything that I saw. The meeting of this girl, the reappearance of Uncle Siddiq, and the map to reach this forest. But I did not mention this tribe on the other side of the forest. From where I passed today and reached this part of the forest. Suddenly a member of the forensic team called me. There was a letter in the clothes of the dead body. My name is Zakir Hussain. I deliberately killed Harun by falsely accusing him of blasphemy. I was the one who killed him. Had incited to burn his dead body. I had played a role in ruining the life of his innocent sister. I had been burdened with this guilt for years. Suddenly, when I came to town, Aaron's demon followed me. My life was forbidden. He told me that if I killed all these boys, if I did not help him in killing him, he would kill my wife and children. Due to the guilt, I was ready to suffer the punishment myself, but I could not see my innocent child and wife die in this way. For the past 2 months, I used to identify every boy and kidnap him through Harun's demon and bring him to this forest and kill him. I am also the one who took the bodies of his daughter and wife out of the city and buried them here in the desert. Harun wanted to live here with his whole family. He has also reserved a grave place for his sister Sonia. Anywhere, when she gets the news that her family's enemies are gone, she can stay in this house and place her grave here. I have no regrets for what I have done. They were also murderers and robbers of honor. After the last rites of Harun, his soul may be raised in China. Why has the beheaded one completed his revenge today? All of us read this letter in turn. DSP Saib and Karam Dad were looking at each other. The case was almost solved. We all had repeatedly not only felt the presence of a mysterious force in this case, but also seen it with our own eyes. I had also seen it. The legal requirements had been fulfilled, the killer had been found, and he himself had met his end. There is wind. When we all reached there, we were surprised to see that the rickshaw was the same one that was seen in the camera footage. But the most surprising thing was to see the condition of the rickshaw. It looked like it had not been used for years. DSP Sir's condition was becoming very strange. We were afraid of such a person who was not alive. We returned to the city after collecting all the dead bodies. I don't know why there was something that was missing in this whole case. Suddenly I was called by DSP Sir. What did the evangelist think about it? Prepare a media brief, or wait for next Tuesday. You want to consider this case from another angle. No matter how much we solve this case, any intelligent person will hardly believe that all this has been done by a demon. What should we write in the report about the mysterious forces? I looked at them and said, I am in the same conflict. Everything has been found. The condition of the rickshaw is visible in the footage. So far, our youths have not realized that they should be asked to do it. What I saw, what I see and feel, I can't attribute it to any mysterious force. I think it is all because of the fear that arose in our minds on the first day. Chika the Sir, I want to find Harun's sister, for that I also want to go to Hyderabad. Her friend Shankar Lal may be Hayat. And then I also want to meet Zakir Hussain's wife and children to find out. What was his mental state during those days? SP Saab looked at me and shook his head and allowed me to go to Hyderabad. I could have gone in my car if I wanted, but I don't know why. My mind kept telling me not to go alone in the car, so I took the AC bus ticket and left for Hyderabad. There was an old man sitting on the same seat as me, who boarded the bus after me. I sat quietly on the seat and put a handkerchief on my face. I wanted to forget everything for a while and relax for a while. My eyes were closed and my body felt a shock, and I felt as if the person sitting next to me got up and grabbed my hand. He took me out of the roof of the bus and flew somewhere in the distant air. I had not been able to see the person's face properly until now. Suddenly I felt that we had landed inside a neighborhood. I saw that a tired man stopped his rickshaw and went towards a door. He opened the lock and entered the house. That old man took my hand and entered the house behind him. The obscene youths were busy with a young girl. The man picked up whatever was in his hand and started beating them. As soon as the boy raised his head, I was shocked to see that. The body I found in the forest resembled him and looked like he was very young. Dream. I also had a shiver on my body. The man took the young man out and brought him out. When the people gathered, he shouted and told them that these boys used to go to his house, in his absence, and violate the sanctity of his chatter and his sister. Today, I caught him red-handed, so some people ran away, while this is Zakir Hussain, Imam Saab's son. No one will believe. The boy who was apologizing to her while beating her a while ago suddenly changed her mind and said that we do not do anything by force, but her sister herself took a huge amount from us. It all does, and Harun's own consent is also included in it. The huge crowd that had gathered there all started speaking different dialects, and then suddenly the scene changed. The next day Zakir Hussain invited some of his friends. They got together and these people brought some sacred papers and put them on Harun's door and then made a huge drama out of complacency. Yes, they considered him to be inferior to themselves. These were the same people in front of whom Zakir Hussain was taken out of his house by beating him. In a short while, the crowd had become angry. Suddenly, someone raised a slogan that the insulting person's head should be cut off from his body. Imam Saab had also become a part of this angry crowd. No one wanted to stop them, and as soon as they saw it, these people threw Harun on the ground and separated his head from his body with a sharp tool. All this was happening right in front of me, and now my legs were shaking regularly. A beautiful teenage girl was crying and begging everyone to leave my brother. Kay's brother's head fell apart and she immediately sat down on the ground. She was yelling loudly. Then one of the same people took out petrol from his bike and told each other to just kill him. It is not only his punishment, but it is also necessary to execute him as an example. And they poured that petrol on this person and set him on fire. The smell of burning meat was spreading in the air. Suddenly my eyes were on Chacha Sadiq. He had run away crying and shouted and reached there. Shankar Lal was behind him. Chacha Reman and Chacha Bashir also reached there crying and beating. They were begging for those people. But those people stood there until the victim was burned to death. The girl got up crying and went to her brother. She ran to her friends. They all loved this little girl like her own sister, and they all knew how Harun was being tortured and abused in the last few days. People shouted slogans and laughed. Zakir Hussain looked at this girl with disrespect and laughed and made dirty gestures to her. The deceased was lying naked. They took him to the house. It was evening, and the blue rickshaw of this poor man was the reason for taking the remains of his baby turtle. Now the person who had wrapped his face was holding my hand and flying behind them in the air. Uncle Reman was also on his rickshaw. All friends were going to take their friend to his last place. First, one rickshaw turned towards the forest with the dead person in it, then the second rickshaw also followed it. There was a big dirt road which ended in a field where the trees had been cut and they were secretly taking and selling. These people dug the body of this unfortunate person and buried it there, and to mark it. The small crucifix pendant worn around his neck was made of a small piece of wood. He put it on a stick and buried it on his head. Uncle Sadiq left the rickshaw of his deceased friend there, removed the veil from his face, and I was surprised to see that it was Aaron. He smiled at me beautifully and then disappeared. Suddenly my eyes opened. My whole being was in sweat. I was drowned and I must have woken up with a loud scream. The old man sitting next to me removed the handkerchief from his face and looked at me. It was Aaron. There was a problem in the bus and the bus was standing in a deserted place. The person got off the bus and got lost on one side. I managed myself and got down from the bus. Some people were going back to Karachi. I also sat in the bus coming from Hyderabad and reached back to Karachi. I didn't need to meet anyone. I went straight to the office and needed while doing the operations. He went on to make a complete file of this case. I put all the deaths in the account of Zakir Hussain and wrote him as a mental patient. I had many friends who could help me in this regard. All I needed was a false certificate. It had to be submitted. I also wrote many times in this case that we were repeatedly given the feeling of the presence of a mysterious force on someone during the investigation. And all the people of the team are witnesses to this. I presented the report to the DSP and there was a media briefing in the evening. People asked various questions. As usual, some media people were not satisfied with the performance of the police. I told them that there is fear and terror in the atmosphere. Do not create an atmosphere so that the splendor of the area returns to its normal state. It was surprising that Sub-Inspector Karam-Dad was completely silent all this time. The cut will not come back again. I was not able to say anything now that Karam-Dad said unexpectedly with great seriousness. You have to believe it, otherwise, instead of being cut off. The young man who is year 20 even though he was blackmailed because of RS newspapers. The young AC who was forced to commit suicide by you and your newspaper may now come back to his soul. All the other reporters openly. They started to laugh, but that reporter stood in his place listening for a moment, and was repeatedly wiping the sweat from his forehead and then left there. Sub-Inspector Karam-Dad had got up from there. The family is buried and the last rites will be performed again by a father of the Christian community. Now I want to spend a long vacation with my wife, please allow me. We were all shocked and worried, but he presented his medical report in which he was suffering from a very serious illness, so DSP sir asked the higher authorities. I also took some time off. One day I got a call from Karam-Dad on my mobile. He invited me to have dinner with him. Eat together. My heart also wanted to sit and talk with Karam-Dad, so I immediately agreed. When I reached his house at night, he welcomed me very warmly at the dinner table. At that time, all the accessories were ready as if he knew the time of my arrival. I was very happy and moved the flowers and sweets I had brought with me to Karam-Dad and said, "Give this to Babiji." Karam-Dad said, smiling. He turned towards the kitchen and shouted loudly. As soon as she approached me, I greeted her. She smiled and took flowers and sweets from my hand. Then my eyes immediately fell on her neck where the sign of the cross was swinging. That woman was none other than Sonia, Haroon's sister. My heart started beating in my veins. And when she was 7 years old, she also came and sat on the table. Then, as if my eyes were deceived, I saw that Haroon had also come and sat on the dining table. He also brought his wife. I was sitting in the middle of all of them, as if there was not even a drop of blood in my body. Suddenly the light went out and a loud scream came out of my mouth. I thought I was going to faint, but suddenly there was light in the room. When I saw that 7-year-old girl holding a candle in her hand, she was walking from the kitchen. When she placed the candle in the middle of the table, I looked up and looked at the other side of the table. Karam-Dad, his wife Sonia and his 7-year-old daughter were there. Karam-Dad smiled and put his hand on my hand and said, "Inspector sir, don't be afraid, those people just wanted to meet you for many years. The anxious spirits were wandering around changing their forms like this, now they have gone peacefully to their other world." There were drops of sweat on my forehead and my breath was very bad. Suddenly, the light came back. Now there were only 4 of us. Sonia smiled and held out the tray of food towards me. When I looked at the glass, I saw that Aaron, his wife and his daughter were going out. After opening the door, they turned around and waved at me and disappeared.